So as always, thank you for coming along today, everyone. Lovely to see you. Those of you, I know there's a lot of people off this week in particular because it's half term week in the UK. Um, and it's also the budget week as well tomorrow, budget day tomorrow. So we're all very excited in anticipation of what's going to happen next. And in fact, everybody is currently writing a GPT, ready to go to pump in the budget documents. They can send out a post straight away afterwards to explain and summarize the benefits or otherwise of the budgets coming forward. So anyway, lovely to see you. Well, thanks for coming along. One of our AI Tech Connect series. Just a couple of updates from me. We've just been, Anita and I have been working on the agenda for 2025. We've got a whole different agenda of content coming out and different sessions coming out in 2025 in the new year, including some real practical workshops that we're going to be running as well, where it's literally a case of you're going to come along, bring what you need us to build. We're going to build it live there in front of you type workshops as well. So we've got a whole series of those mapped out now, which would be really cool. So make sure you're getting involved in that. I'm going to, before I introduce my guest, I just wanted to share a couple of things with you myself, if that's okay. So let me just share my screen with you, and hopefully this is going to pop up okay. I'm working off about 3 different laptops today. There it goes. Cool. Okay, cool. So just three very quick things from me that I wanted to sort of quickly share that just sort of came out from some conversations I've been having as well. Something we haven't announced to the TRM membership yet, but we're about to announce it, and this is going live in November, is that we've created a brand new training program called the Future Fit Recruiter. We're really, really excited about this. This is a whole new training program for all of your recruiters, as always, completely free to utilize. There's no cost or anything for this. But basically, we're looking at all the skills that a recruiter needs to have in 2025, and we've built a training course around all those different types of skills. So you'll hear more about that coming through. Obviously, a lot of that includes some stuff around tech and AI as well, because whilst we don't want necessarily our recruiters to be building stuff and being from that point of view, we do want them to be tech literate and make sure they understand and embrace some of the AI stuff that we're doing. So we'll be announcing this in very shortly. So just be prepared for this coming. But we'll be rolling it out next month to all of your consultants as well. Sort of stuff. So I'm pretty excited by that. A lot of thinking has gone into actually what makes a really bloody good recruiter in tomorrow's market rather than what is in today's market. So that's coming soon. So look out for that. Second thing I just wanted to quickly share this with you. Some of you may see me do this before, but I've done this with quite a lot of recruitment companies and recruiters recently. We've had some real successes off the back of this, and it's just sort of quite a fun thing to do. And this is it's a little bit not so much AI stuff, more so around sort of technology, but this piece around how does a niche recruiter really own a market right now in this current sort of marketplace. And I'll just quickly run you through a very quick sort of process that you could do yourselves. But if you go to, I'm sure, in fact, I'll ask a quick question, actually, a quick show of hands. How many of you are familiar with answerthepublic.com? How many of you use it or have seen it before? So none of you have, it looks like. So answerthepublic.com in essence is a place where it's linked to Google, and it basically tells you what people search for on Google and on YouTube and et cetera, et cetera. So what you can do is you can go into answerthepublic.com and actually identify what your target demographic, your candidates or your clients are actually searching for, physically searching for on Google. And then what you can then do is actually own that domain, own that URL, or own that search term. It's really quite clever and quite fun. So as an example, I typed in developer jobs here. I was doing this with a recruiter a couple of weeks ago around this. Typed in developer jobs, what came up, loads of different things. They target the US market. So they looked at developer jobs Utah was their sort of target audience. So they thought, how cool would it be if they own developer jobs Utah, and through answerthepublic.com, it actually tells you exactly what people are searching for around those search terms. Then what we did was we then went to GoDaddy, where you can buy domains, and we literally went and bought developerjobsutah.com, or well, this is sort of the process we went through, which basically cost £9. So it didn't cost any money whatsoever to buy. So what now? This recruiter now physically owns developerjobsutah.com as a domain. So now what they can do is they can build a whole hashtag campaign all linked to Developer Jobs Utah, which we know is being searched for on Google based on what we saw on ontothepublic.com. So on the back of that, you can go onto Google Sites. You can then go and build a website for free, because Google Sites is obviously free. It's linked to Google, which means it drives right up the SEO rankings, which is fantastic. So in about a minute, they can build a website which is for developer jobs in Utah, what it's like to work as a developer job, some of your live vacancies, etc. They can have it linking back to your website, linking back to your LinkedIn profile, whatever else it might be. And then they can launch that as a physical domain and as a hashtag campaign. So now they're running, or they're going to start, they haven't launched this yet, but they're now going to start running these campaigns all around hashtag developer jobs Utah, etc., to move up the SEO rankings. When people start searching for that web domain, developerjobsutah.com, is there. They own it for life and it can drive back into it. And the reason why I mentioned that, so we've started to roll these out with quite a few other recruiters, picking different domains in different areas based on different search terms. And it's really, really quite cool. So if you have a look at what the search terms are for your markets in particular, and then go and buy that domain, you own it for life pretty much. You have to renew it every year, but you don't own it for life. But you can then run some really cool campaigns driving people back to it. So I just thought I'd share that with you. If you want some more information about that, or you want me to do a one-to-one session with you, and actually I'll show you how to physically do it, we'll do it together. I'll show you it's really, really simple, but it's really quite clever and really quite cool. And I'd say we've got getting some quite good results off the back of that. The third thing I'm starting to do now, on top of the new agenda we've got for the new Tech Connect series coming out, we're starting out every month. There's lots and lots of new content and conversations being shared across the community, and a lot of people sharing examples of what they're doing and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to start to do now every month is produce a basic cheat sheet, which is a summary, the top 20 things that basically people have been talking about, the top 20 ideas they've come up with, tricks they've used, tech they've used, and so on and so forth. And I'll be sharing that out. I've just finished the October one, so Anita, I'll send that through to you afterwards, and if you could send it through to everybody on this call afterwards, that'd be fantastic. And you can get, basically, it's a nice summary of some really, really cool ideas and a quick win source solution for you as well. In that, I just wanted to, obviously, we've been running some sessions, some live sessions around developing AI, etc. And off the back of some of those live sessions, there were one thing that came off the back of it, which was around some of the prompting that you're using and how to redefine some of the prompts that you're using to get better outputs. And there's two models that have been used and we've been using in these live events. One was the BRTF model, one was the Risen model. If any of you've been to any of those live events, you'd be familiar with this already, I'm sure. But they're really simple guides and frameworks about how you create prompts, in essence. I'll share this with you afterwards so you've got copies of it. But the BRTF stands for background request tone and format. So that's the structure when you're building out a prompt, and I've mapped it all out for you here. So basically, here's an example prompt that you could use using the BRTF model. It just gets you better results off the back of it, basically better outputs off the back of it. So if you are building prompts currently for any of the AI, whether it be Copilot or GPT or whatever, use this model as a sort of framework to build out your prompts. Similarly, the other one you could use is one called Risen, which is role intent, specific example, and nuance. And again, I've mapped it out for you on this slide deck, which we'll share with you afterwards. But again, there's an example on here of how to basically, so this is how you prompt your AI to deliver the right sort of output. So the role, act as a recruitment expert, intent, write me a LinkedIn post, specifics, example, and then the nuance piece. And then here's an example prompt that you can see below. So I just wanted to share that with you. So there's a few things happening. We've got all the new series coming out with the new interactive sessions where we're building the stuff with you. We've got those ideas I just came up with, I just shared with you about owning your job niche. Worth having a look at that. I think you have a lot of fun with that. I think you do some really cool stuff with it. And then that piece around these October top 20 ideas and tricks and techniques that come out of it, which includes obviously these couple of prompt ideas to have a think about as well. We'll get these slides shared with you afterwards, so you'll have a copy of those. So I just wanted to share that with you, give you some thinking to sort of have a look at. And we'll get obviously that September guide to you as well, the October guide to you as well. Let's move on to what we're going to talk about today and our plan for today. So we've got as always, we've got a guest on with us today, which is great. Today we're focusing on, I suppose it's less about finding the technology. I think there's plenty of stuff out there you can go and find. What's really important is the whole implementation, the adoption, and the alignment of that tech and that AI and stuff that you're using within your business, especially when we've got significantly ever-changing business priorities right now. So we've invited on one of the TRM partners, Louis, welcome. Louis, welcome. I got this get wrong. Louis, welcome. Who's the product director of Pump. If you're not familiar with Pump, it's a Microsoft preferred ATS system for niche recruiters, embedded with Dynamics 365 and connected into Microsoft 365 as well. So Louis is not here to sell Microsoft Dynamics or Pump for that matter, but he is here to share some ideas around his experience with adoption, rolling out, alignment, etc., and implementation of tech and AI as well, and that type of stuff. So Louis, firstly, thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand the baton over to you. As always, anyone on the call today, if you've got any questions as we go, feel free to unmute yourself or add it into the chat, and we'll drop those into that. And then Louis, I'll pass the button over to you.
Great, thanks so much, James. I'll just share my screen. Let me know when that's coming through.
Yep, got that.
Great. Yeah, so thanks for having me on, James, Anita, and the TRN group here. It's nice to be here. when I was invited on, I thought let's get back to basics and maybe focus a bit on how we adapt to change and how businesses adapt to change, and try and get some practical tips and solutions from our experience here with implementing Pump and working with smaller and larger recruitment businesses and internally here on how best to implement change and implement different technologies. So it's a bit of a back to basics sort of thing. I'm going to start with top 6 challenges, at least, that we've come across and we've experienced, and then work into some more practical suggestions, solutions, and tips and methods at the end. So I, really appreciate any input and questions and thoughts on what we're putting across at the end of this presentation. So I think the first question is probably why bother? Why bother going through adapting to change, putting some strategic change and change management in place? I would say we've experienced a lot of different kind of clients and a lot of different kind of partners we've worked with. And I think one thing I'd like to say at the beginning is you don't have to over-engineer this. I'm going to go through a lot of different tools and applications that can help you, but it depends what you want out of your business. It's fine just to have a simple out-the-box system in place that does it what it needs to do, or you can get a lot more in depth with your recruitment business in terms of putting technology in place. Satya Nadella, we're going to quote Microsoft CEO, obviously, because we're a Microsoft partner. He's all about focusing on how technology, if you can get it right and if you can respond to change properly, can help you build resilience in your business, help you manage business priorities, and help you adopt changes in technology innovation. So really what the 4 things I wanted to focus on in terms of outputs from today is optimizing operations, so putting efficiencies in place, but also transforming services, existing services, and building new solutions and services as well. So using it as an opportunity to transform and offer your clients and candidates and your staff better solutions internally and externally. So that's my next point, empowering your employees, but also engaging with your customers as well. So where is this relevant? Obviously, my first thoughts are around implementing a CRM, because that's our experience. We've worked with very complex implementations with Pump because we both provide an out-of-box product, but one that can be fully customized by the wider Microsoft platform. So we're building out solutions, and more complicated customers are building their own solutions with our tools internally. That brings up all sorts of challenges around how people manage change, how they train their users on these tools, how they align what they're doing with what we're doing as a partner, how they adopt and innovate with new technologies. And often these are the biggest challenges. But I wouldn't say it's about system-wide changes as well we're talking about here. It could be smaller little projects. James just talked about, that the website solution there. That involves putting that in place, if you wanted to, involves a mini project, right? How do you get that in place? How do you adopt the technology? Who's responsible for doing it? How do you make sure you take advantage of that, even though it's a fairly small application? So we could be talking about CRM. We could talking about individual apps and individual bits of technology. I also want to take maybe your mind off technology as well and more focus on how can change management tools and methods be used just from a non-technological point of view, or focusing on their business objective. So internally here recently, we put in place some sequencing sales campaigns. We wanted to get our sales team focused on a more streamlined approach. And we started with that premise and then looked to technology and looked to how that could be put in place after that fact. And I would also say people often confuse these projects with an IT project. You really don't, from my experience, want your IT team or your IT people necessarily managing your change management process exclusively. They're a partner and a stakeholder in that process, your IT side, but it needs to be led by business people and business decisions. And that's a mistake we see a lot. With CRM implementations, it becomes a back office IT project, right? Rather than a front office business led project when putting in place technology. And it'll get handed over and siloed over into the IT. I'm not saying everybody does this. I'm saying that's just something that we've experienced, which is a learning lesson. So I'll start with the 6 challenges that we come up with, or six areas that I think cause problems, not with just recruitment, but with any business. Let me move the that out the way. With any business, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that recruitment, as in the recruitment business, is a complex environment, right? So it's a complex environment. And what we mean by that is that agreement around how to do things is not necessarily expert. And what technology to use can be variable, right? And how it should be implemented could be variable. And that requires certain methods and approaches in terms of putting them in place to achieve that. So I've got this diagram here as a really good example. So you can have businesses and organizations that have very clear understanding of what the scope and priorities and what's important to them, and very clear understanding of what technology is needed to put that in place. And that means you can put something like it, like a good example is a production line in a warehouse. There's a set way of doing things, a set way of requirements, and it's very streamlined and everyone knows what they're doing. And the opposite of that is complete anarchy. And recruitment, a lot of white collar office-based businesses are somewhere in the middle here where, and especially in sales, right, how to achieve that result. There's a lot of debate and there's a lot of iteration around how to put something in place. And with technology, right, there's loads of technology out there. There's loads of options, loads of ways of doing things. So there's often that challenge. I think that's one of the biggest challenges in terms of, there's also internally within a business, you have different stakeholder groups. You've got your users, and your users, of course, are motivated by getting things through as quickly as possible, right? That's not necessarily the same motivation as senior management, who might be more concerned with data and reporting and strategic decision making, or middle management, right? They're more interested in the results of their team. And that conflict, how do you one of the big challenges is how do you reconcile that conflict in an organization? How do you bring that together? I often see a lot of recruitment businesses, and again, there's obviously exceptions. You have lack of defined processes, a lack of defined process for changing those processes and enforcing those processes and managing change. And of course, also in this industry, there's rapid change going on with technology and your priorities change. I think you mentioned that there's lots of different business priorities and you can't do everything, right? So how do you manage how do you decide what to do and in what order? Is a big challenge. I think the other thing is, and this diagram on the right, often on its own really expresses it. And I suspect everyone here has been through projects and technology projects like this, where people often don't really know what they want, and there are whispers that get lost, and the original requirement gets lost as it goes through different stakeholders, different departments, both internally in a business and with suppliers and third parties, right? And what you may get at the end, right, maybe you've got a year-long project or a 6-month project, at the end isn't necessarily what users or management wanted or expected. A lot of assumptions have been made. Now, one of the traditional approaches to that, let's define everything up front, specify everything up front in a long document. We've given out long documents, right? I have a strong suspicion no one's, often they're not read, right, in terms of these long documents that come out. So if one side is chaos, the other side is, okay, huge lengthy specifications to ensure everything's the same. The problem with lengthy projects, lengthy specifications, is things change, like on point 1 as well. So over time, your business priorities change and the technology changes, especially these days. So how do we deal with users not knowing what they want and things changing rapidly over time? It's one of the big challenges. The other aspect here is a flawed system of prioritization and decision making. I think is a challenge in a lot of businesses. And again, not necessarily recruitment. You've got I found this image from Gartner here from 2023. I think TRN has done a similar survey that produced similar results in terms of aligning strategy and technology and putting it out to their members. But you have two sides here. I've seen recruitment agencies with very traditional hierarchical management structures, right? Which can cause, bureaucratic delays in delivering results and rolling things out. And I've seen recruitment agencies with very little management structures at all, where things are very loose and fast and ready. And that's understandable because recruitment is essentially a sales business. And you've got those two extremes that can cause problems. And we've seen both. either way, it prevents employees and teams and stakeholders in the business from assessing and focusing on what's the priority. So the challenge I'm trying to get to is, what is the business priority? Who is responsible in your organization for setting and defining those priorities and making those absolutely clear to your staff? And then how do you actually deliver on those priorities? And how do you deal with changing priorities? So is there a systematic management system in place for dealing with change, dealing with changing priorities, and put in place ways of delivering solutions for those priorities? Worker engagement, I think, is one everyone here will probably have experienced one form or another, which is a really obvious example is people not using the systems that have been put in place, users not using the system for good or bad reasons, right? I think a really good example, people will go, it's too data intensive, too much data entry, too much bureaucracy, something like that. I'm not going to use the system. It's always faster for a recruiter, right, to just download the CV out of Outlook, email it directly to the client and put nothing in the system. Of course, it is faster to do that, right, than use the CRM. So that's one example of lacking in working engagement. But I think more broadly, perhaps, stakeholders and users and departments not being involved from the beginning of a project is the big problem. For having the right people involved early on that can provide the information and get involved will help with user engagement down the line. I'm guessing I'm getting into solutions a bit there. I think training and adoption and communicating changes, managing changes. If you've got systems that are changing every 2 weeks, every month, how are you getting those best practice changes out to your staff? Are they interested in adopting? Silos we see a lot in a lot of organizations. I mentioned IT earlier being siloed off, but sales being siloed from marketing, delivery being siloed from sales and so forth is a problem, both of data and people. And I'm quite interested in this shift to semi-skilled work to knowledge workers. So by knowledge workers, I mean in the expectation of modern employees, or some modern employees, to be able to identify issues, think through problems, right, and actually put in solutions themselves. And again, it's back to that thing of who is responsible for resolving problems in your organization and delivering solutions, or is it just being thrown over the fence to management or to IT, as an example? I was thinking earlier, I used to be in marketing departments for a long time now. Obviously, you're expected to source your own technology, implement that technology, learn it, use it, and deliver on it yourself, with support from others. But it's something you're self-organizing to achieve. And it's perhaps something to bear in mind. The fifth point here I had around transparency and accountability. So I think there are issues in organizations where operational problems are perhaps ignored and not addressed through a clear process of continuous improvement. And that builds up cost, risks, technical debt, right? And I think we'll talk about this more in a minute, but putting in place the structures of transparency and radical transparency and systematic processes around that to ensure everything's on the table and any problems and challenges can be addressed and people are all aware what the priorities are, what they're working towards, will help. I like this diagram on here. It's one of, when we went through this our own internal change a few years back at Pump and at Colleague Software, this diagram came up a lot when trying to address problems, cultural problems internally in the organization, right, that get in the way of trying to achieve change. And then finally, it's really, really difficult and not easy at all to do continuous improvement and to successfully deliver on projects, in my opinion. And I used to be very naive about this when I started, right? Just put agile in place, off you go, things are going to be successful. Just if you only had a system. There are all sorts of cultural management and process issues to address before you even get to the part of the technology being, functionally working and able to deliver on these solutions, obviously. So there's a huge, what a wide area to consider and issues to address to be really successfully putting in place change management and new technologies. And I really like this. I took this from Stephen Denning, who wrote a book a few years ago. He said, once businesses are moved from the simple task of providing services, and by that I means relatively simple, right, of providing a service, perhaps as an individual, the simple task of a recruiter providing a service, and sets its sights on the complex goal of growing and scaling whilst delighting customers, employees. And really by that, it means by being competitive in the market, you're dealing with a much more radically difficult challenge when you're moving from that piece to the, to that. I mean, the modern world with the rapidly changing technologies and so forth makes that even harder, and expectations. So I'm going to move on to some practical tips. And I know James said at the beginning, let's try and focus on some actually suggestions. I know a lot of that was theoretical, so I'll look into solutions. So I've got 6 solutions here. How am I doing on time? Am I going too fast? Because I was a bit worried.
No, you're doing absolutely fine. I think the key here, as we said, is like you keep these solutions like really practical and stuff that these guys can implement. If we go too big picture on this, I think we'll lose the concept of what we can do day to day.
Yeah. I'm a fiend for big picture, but yeah, I'll try and focus on some practical tips in this. So I just wanted to set the scene, and so on the 6 things we're doing and we've seen people do, and a lot of these approaches are quite well established in the technology sector, right? And that's there's another big picture thing, sorry, but really how can non-tech businesses work like technology businesses? Really there's something there that might be worth considering. So the first thing is, before doing anything, and especially embarking on the bigger systems implementation projects, is make sure you know what you're trying to achieve from a business point of view. Imagining a future state for your business, ensure your business objectives in the short and medium term are well defined and they're clear. Now that might be easier said than done. I've got a practical example of a methodology here at Microsoft that we use internally called Microsoft Catalyst. I can send more information around on the workshops that are involved with that, but they have something called the IDEA framework, which is Inspire, Design, Empower, Achieve, more acronyms. And it uses design-led thinking to engage users involved and stakeholders involved in the project, right? We collaborate tools and methods. So one of them is the envisioning workshop, which we've done with clients, which I think is very useful, and we've done internally here. And it has a number of workshops where you can identify and prioritize problem statements, right? And then a number of workshops where you can identify and prioritize solutions to those projects statements. And this doesn't have to be a one-off. It can be something that occurs on a regular basis. And again, I can share these after, but this is an example here on the screen of how you can identify problem statements. So one thing they've got here is you can start with a rosebud thorn exercise, which is a classic, what's gone well, what's challenging, what are the opportunities here, and involve stakeholders in your business in that, and get them expressing ideas and opening up about the problems and challenges and opportunities you're facing. Once you've got those ideas together and they've been voted on, you can group them into key themes, and you can start to see themes emerge that you may want to then prioritize and focus your time on. A big, one might, an obvious one might be that reporting isn't accurate. We can't make decision making through reporting because data is not being collected on the front end. What are the challenges around that? Recruiters don't want to enter the data on the front end because there are problems around that in terms of what they're going to do. Okay, how can we start to resolve that? So you can put things into themes, start to vote on it, and then translate these into clear how might we problem statements. So this isn't our own, by the way. This is all from Microsoft. So how might we transform engagement models so we put customers in the center? It could be very, very specific. And then you can move on to the external, to the solutions. So how can we resolve those problem statements? And there's something called the Creativity Matrix workshop. And again, I've got templates for all of these where you can start to look at ideas on how to resolve these. And it has a column for stakeholders, and it has a column for potential solutions. So what departments do we need to involve to resolve this problem? What are the ideas? What do different departments need to be doing? And once you started to get some solutions together internally, by the way, you can involve third parties in this. It doesn't have to be employees. You can, again, group those potential solutions and then most importantly, prioritize using importance difficulty. I think everyone here would have probably seen this diagram before in one form or another, but it's a great way of coming up with a prioritized roadmap, right, of actual solutions you want to put in place. So along the bottom, you have the difficulty of delivering on that solution, the complexity involving delivering on it, not just technically, includes training, user adoption, management, all of those things, right, have to be taken into account. And then the importance being business value, you know, ROI really in the end. And you can start to look at what you're going to focus on. Or of course, the least difficult and most important things you can put at the top of your to-do list. The things that are really difficult and not important, you can icebox archive, throw in the bin. Essentially, you can start to come up with some clear project plans of what needs to be done. So moving on to point 2, actually delivering on this. So you've got your prioritized list of work for the year, a roadmap for the year. Everyone in the business is aware of what that is, or everyone in the team, or whatever the project might be. How do you deliver on it? So again, we talked about the challenge of potentially giving this over to IT or middle management taking charge of this. But something in tech companies, you see this concept of self-organizing cross-functional teams. So traditional functional teams on the left in this diagram, and on the right, and the phrase development team, it could just be the project team, a project team involving of all the people that need to be involved to successfully deliver on that project without outside interference, right? So they have the authority to make decisions, to deliver on it, and successfully, and put something in place. And cross-functional, it contains everyone required to do that. An example methodology of obvious one, Scrum, right? Classic old Scrum that's still used by a lot of software businesses. So in the Scrum teams, we encourage our clients to adopt. They'll have a product owner, right? It could be a project owner, whatever you want to call them. But essentially the decision maker, and that's my role here at Pump, the decision maker on business value and priority decides what's important and in what order. And they're the sole decision maker, obviously reporting to senior leadership, but they have the authority to make decisions on that project. The delivery team, so those delivering the work, that could be third party people internally, whoever. And of course, who's going to be validating the work and feeding back on that work as well. You know, in a software company, you might have testers, but internally that could be a key stakeholders. It could be a digital champion. It could be a recruiter who's championing this idea, right? So they're going to be involved, and they're the ones that are going to validate and tell you it's working for them. And the other thing just to consider here is training. Often I see training separated, as in recruitment training, from tech training, and they're seen as like two entirely different things. But in my opinion, that should be integrated in. And the other thing is middle management. So if you've got something delivered in a project like this, how does it get communicated out to management, right? That something's been put in place and they're responsible for now, taking on partially the enforcement and the usage of that. And what does that process look like? Sorry, I'm going 100 miles an hour. Point 3, so you've got your team, you've got your priorities. So the next thing is customer-driven iterations, or sprints, if you're familiar with Scrum. Often big projects, they'll be all planned out on very complicated project planning tools, and immediately fall behind with theoretical estimations and timeframes. What I would advise as a way to manage larger projects, or even smaller ones, is deliver everything in iterative chunks, plan everything into chunks. So an example might be a 2-week delivery cycle, or a 1-month delivery cycle. And at the end of that delivery cycle, stop and review what's been done, take feedback, take stock, and take the opportunity to adapt your plan moving forward. And that continuous cycle really allows a project, or a larger or a smaller project, remain aligned with the priorities of the business. So this concept, I like this phrasing at the top, that delighting customers and users, growing a business, getting something right in a complex environment can only be approached by successive approximations, right? It won't be perfect first time. So get get to that first example quickly and iterate on that. So examples, yeah, 1 month, 2 weekly sprints, have a planning meeting at the beginning with that cross-functional team every 2 weeks, every 1 month, and deliver the top of that priority list, that will be refined and maintained by that product owner, by who's been made responsible for the priorities within that project. The other thing in these sprints, these 2-week iterations, is try and deliver value at the end of every 2 or 4 weeks, if that is possible. It's not always possible, but try and break things down so you're constantly delivering something of substance and things are moving forward within that cycle. So theoretically, every single sprint should deliver done work. From a technology point of view, we're releasing every 2 weeks, releasing every 4 weeks into a customer's environment. But I always encourage our customers to try and use that same model, try and lend some structure to it internally. So it's not sort of a never-ending project without any accountability. Deliver to and show users what's going on. And that allows for rapid adaptation. It allows for feedback. It allows for strategic changes if you change your mind. It might no longer be a priority, so you can change direction. And that keeps costs and risks low, right? And if you're getting CRM partners on board, especially with the bigger projects or pay and bill projects, I'd sort of ask them about how they manage delivery around this kind of thing and how they'll involve your people and your stakeholders in that. So some practical examples: have a sprint review call at the end of each sprint with all the key stakeholders and gather feedback. That's not for talking at people about what you've done. It's about getting information back, right, about what you've done and adapting the plans. The product owner, again, solely responsible. You don't want someone waiting a month to get a committee decision from high on above. I appreciate there's obviously there obviously has to be some controls there, but you really want to try to empower the team to be able to make quick changes in direction and get the right people involved on that single review call so you can make really rapid decisions. And this can be scaled up on a quarterly or an annual basis as well, So it could be something you do as a more generic roadmap review over a longer period. This diagram, I quite like. It's a bit, there's a lot going on it, but it really gives an example of a more traditional waterfall project approach that's in red, right? And an agile or scrum or whatever agile methodology you want to use. Scrum's just one of many, right? To put, to deliver on that project. And on the left, you've got value again. On the right, going along the bottom, you've got time. And what you're having here is the delivery of value, right? Early on in the agile project, and users involved early on in validation and adjustment in the direction of that timeline to get to a go live situation, to get to a target. And what you see in maybe more traditional projects, big upfront specification, techie sort of stuff gets out, released at the end, then users get involved, and then they discover it's not what they wanted, right? So in perhaps putting it in a bad light, but this incremental and iterative approach allows for those checkpoints, right? Allows you to get risks and the cost low early on. I think this is probably along a similar theme, but when you're focusing on what you want to deliver, don't overcomplicate and deliver and work on achieving the simplest possible thing to deliver the highest value in the shortest time frame. Again, back to that point, you don't need everything perfect from the start and then deliver it over a year, because you'll just find it's wrong anyway. So rapidly deliver on simple solutions, right? So you can start inspecting, feedbacking, adapting on that and evolving that over time. So some examples of this in Lean, it's called minimum viable product. It could be a minimal viable service, right? Or it doesn't have to be a technology product. And you can involve, the product owner can be involved in gathering, what the starting point should be, and gathering feedback over time through collaborative exercises and user stories and questions with end users. And if you can, something to do, if you're able to get trials or experiment early on with solutions and put them in place with minimum commercial commitments, right? So you can try them out and get things moving. That is ideal. And something we have done with clients is give them an environment they can start working with early with a minimal commitment, not having to, commit to 100 recurrent subscriptions. So you can start that early process of reviewing and putting in place the solutions you need. And something also bearing in mind, with more traditional projects, you have a fixed scope. But in agile projects, what you can do is you fix the quality standards and the costs and the time frame, i.e. 6 sprints or whatever, and you vary the scope. So you've minimized the scope if the timeframes and costs start to slip, right? By focusing on delivering on the simplest possible thing. And in image format, on the left, you see a really good example of MVP, of iterative incremental improvement. Obviously, you've got the skateboard right at the beginning. If this is time, users have got that straight away, and they can feed back on the reality of that as it evolves, rather than waiting to the end of that period to then see what the result is. And finally, the final point here, and again in Scrum, this is something called retrospecting or having retrospectives, is this concept of like putting in place radical transparency and methods and for ensuring things remain transparent. So you can put in systematic management structures for the identification and removal of inefficiencies, of impediments, of problems by workers, by these self-organizing teams, through making everything transparent and open and visual. So in practical terms, something you can do within those monthly or 2 weekly sprints is something called a sprint retrospective, and it's meetings that use liberating structure methodologies, something like what went well, what went badly, what can be improved, what blockers are in the way of you as a team and you as individuals delivering on your job. You can put have this meeting, put these structures in place to bring this out into the open. And in a lot of tech companies, there's probably overkill for some recruitment, but there's someone called a scrum master or an agile person that's responsible for essentially getting some conflict going and getting things out in the open, right? And identifying what's getting in the way of people doing their jobs successfully, bringing out new ideas and new opportunities as well. So this isn't necessarily feedback from the organization. This is a team looking inwards, but you could do it as at a higher departmental level or across the entire organization. Daily stand-ups, obviously very well known on the sales front, also used in technology business. There's often a lot of repetition. What is done yesterday, what is being done today, but really what the point of a daily stand-up, in our opinion, is the removal of any impediments. So it's the team talking to one another to remove any impediments, but also making sure within your sprint you're on track and you can adapt a plan for the day to make sure you're getting where you need to be within that sprint cycle, that time cycle, and adapting your plan. So it's a collaborative effort. So it's not just a management reporting mechanism, which sometimes it's used as. I made 100 phone calls yesterday. I'm going to make 100 phone calls today, kind of thing. Planning tools. So Kanban boards are worth looking at. Sprint boards for Scrum. If you want to go more complicated, you can use something like Microsoft Azure DevOps, but we will all have access to something like Microsoft Planner, which is in Teams and free to anyone using Office 365. That's a classic Kanban board, so new, in progress, blocked, done, and you can use those free tools to manage team projects like this. And collaboration tools, obviously Teams. I mean, I know we're on Zoom, but I'm a big Teams enthusiast. Every one of our clients has a dedicated Teams area that has all of their key stakeholders, their cross-functional team and our cross-functional team. We work as a single project team and to deliver in these cycles. But you could set up dedicated teams for specific projects, right, with the right people in them. So it doesn't just have to be, all siloed and channeled off. Miro and Klaxoon are also great whiteboard tools for running workshops, running retrospectives, and also design and scoping workshop sessions as well. So coming to some conclusions. And these are the sort of four I often start with. The free, it's free, yeah, free. I start with, if I'm starting off a project with a client, but I emphasize, what's the point of this project? We want to try and have early and continuous delivery from the beginning, not in a year's time, of valuable working software every couple of weeks. It doesn't have to be the word working software, whatever that solution is you're going after. And that needs to be delivered in a highly flexible and responsive manner through the collaborative effort of a self-organizing cross-functional team, which is you, the client, and including us. Objective is always to deliver MVP early and effectively, minimal risk and cost, so we can get rapid feedback in responsive to changing requirements. And there's a balance here between speed, getting things out there quickly, but there's also the opportunity to innovate and adapt the plan as we get feedback off users, as new opportunities come up, and create new efficiencies. It may not have been thought about at the beginning of the project, but perhaps a new opportunity has been seen to automate something, to automate a process. And most importantly, I'd say, especially for the big projects, you don't want to just have a go live and then that's the end of the process. It should be going on forever, right? In theory, you want a continuous improvement change management process for whatever. Say it's your CRM, to keep it simple. That's continuous. And continuously manages changes being brought out by the CRM and changes you might be making to the CRM, obviously bringing on board new users and so forth. So whatever that project may be, I try and put in place a company-wide process for managing change and keep it there. So that's me. That was fun to go through. So I'll hand over to any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Louis. If you want to maybe start sharing the screen, we can bring up people's faces up. I was thinking about this as you were talking. I was thinking, jeepers, is this too big picture? Is this like sort of like Microsoft tech implementation stuff going on here, where some of us are just going, how do I get AI working within the business? But
sure. I like talking about this stuff.
I know you do. No.
That's why I did. Yeah.
I'm not giving you a hard time. Shut up, don't worry. But what I am saying is that when you actually listen to some of the things that you talk about, it actually is really, really applicable to our rollout of our businesses. So, that lack of engagement piece, I think there is a big fear factor at the moment, especially around AI and stuff, about recruiters being fearful about any of this change that's happening at the moment. There's a lot of change going on. I think we need to get on top of that piece around the engagement piece. The minimum viable product, absolutely. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing at the moment with any rollout. AI, small, big picture, whatever it is around actually what is the minimal we're actually trying to create here rather than do the bigger piece. I think actually working in sprints is spot on. And that's where we've got some real successes across the TRN community of people who are saying, let's just do a 30-day sprint in a particular area. Let's roll that piece out. Let's see if it works. Let's prove the model works. And then that will get engagement. And then we'll go to the next piece as well. And that last piece around MS Planner and Kanban tools, I was on a call this morning with one of the members who's absolutely flying at the moment. They've had their best 12 months in history, which is quite extraordinary in this type of marketplace. But they've had their best 12 months in history. It's been absolutely fantastic. But what they've been doing is they've been really, really particular and deliberate about their rollout of tech. And they've used MS Planner to the T as part of that sort of process. And again, I know that sounds quite a basic thing to do, but if we're going to do any form of change within our businesses, which we are going through naturally at the moment, then we're having a proper project plan to manage that process going through it as well. So while some of your stuff was bigger picture, Louis, and you and I were chatting about this before, I think actually there's some really meaty stuff in there for anything that you're doing from any implementation, whether it be big, small, or otherwise. So really, really spot on. Any questions from anybody at all, either about what Louis talked about or anything to do with the AI tech type stuff that we're sort of talking about here today, that we can chat about in particular? Or I'm going to put a question back to you guys. Is anybody doing anything quite uniquely different at the moment with regards to their tech and AI that they're quite pleased and proud about? Or are we literally still trying to figure our way through this at the moment? Give me either a figure it out, or we're doing something pretty unique and pretty special.
We're not doing anything unique. We're still figuring out things. We've probably got enough projects that we're implementing just now that we're focusing on them: phone system, CRM, CV formatting, and a couple of reporting tools as well. So we've got several projects going on that will make us more efficient, but they're not right into the AI space. Although the CV formatting maybe is.
Yeah.
but we're just open to lots of ideas. So thanks very much, Louis.
I find this a really interesting time at the moment. I really, really do. Because if you look at the pressure on people in recruitment, running businesses, full stop at the moment, business owners, everything else. And in the UK, with the budget coming out tomorrow, a lot more pressure, a lot more challenge, a lot more change happening again. All the change we've got in employment laws, a lot more change. The recruiters are feeling it as well. I think they're really, really feeling it at the same sort of time. So we've got to be really careful about how we manage this change process, not only from us rolling out new systems and tech and better ways of working and blah, 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 but also just the stuff that they're facing on a day-to-day basis. I think it's a really fascinating time. I don't know about you, I've had quite a few calls with people in the last 24 hours or so, people who are really feeling the stress of it at the moment, about the stress of change. I think just generally sort of stuff. And I think that's an unprecedented time for that. I don't know how you're feeling that, whether you're thinking that's not really, it's fine. I mean, I love change. I'm a big fan of it personally, but it's something to factor in, I think, definitely. Okay, cool. Listen, Louis, thank you for your time again. Really, really appreciate it. Obviously, if anyone wants to reach out to Louis, we'll make sure you've got his details. It's all on the TRM Well platform as well, over at Pump. So have a good look around what he's doing, big picture and small picture as well from that point of view. We've got some notes that will come from this, which we'll share with everybody afterwards as well, plus the stuff I shared before. We'll roll out the Future Fit program in the next couple of days, so you'll see more about that sort of stuff, and make sure you're getting all your consultants booked onto that. And we'll also roll out with Anita and I just finalising the agenda for all the sessions next year, the 2025 sessions for the Tech Connect series. Again, we're going really hardcore practical, so this is where you need to give us ideas about some of the stuff that you want to really, really focus on. For example, we're going to do a whole session around Microsoft Copilot. But I'm not convinced anybody's really got their head around Copilot yet, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. We're about to potentially implement it across the whole of TRN. I think it's a really unique thing, which will then negate the need to use some of these other stuff. And obviously then, Louis, obviously you're a big fan, I'm sure, of Copilot and everything else with the stuff that you're doing with the analytics and Microsoft and that sort of stuff. So
yeah, if people like what they see, it comes with Pump. So
there you go. It comes with Pump. There we go. So direct. There we go. Listen, Louis, thanks so much for your time. Thank you for those who listened live today. Thanks for those who listened back to the recording. Keep the conversations going, please. And we look forward to catching up very soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, Louis. Thanks, everybody.